The conference hall glittered with gold chandeliers and glass walls that reflected the city skyline. Cameras flashed, investors murmured, and the air pulsed with anticipation. At the center stood Adrian Vallon, the man the world called untouchable, the ruthless CEO whose empire stretched across continents. His tailored suit clung to broad shoulders, his jaw locked like steel. He had won hostile takeovers, crushed rivals, and rewritten entire industries. Tonight was supposed to be his triumph. But something was wrong. Adrian's fingers twitched against the podium. A stabbing pain shot through his chest. He tried to steady himself, but his vision blurred. The words on the teleprompter swam into meaningless shapes. Gasps rippled through the room. "Mr. Vallon?" one board member whispered. He stumbled, gripping the podium as his body buckled. His knees hit the marble floor with a hollow crack. "Call an ambulance," someone shouted. But no one moved. The investors who once worshipped him hesitated. Lawyers exchanged nervous glances. Employees clutched their phones but dared not act. Their loyalty had always been to his power, not to the man himself. Adrian's heart pounded erratically, each beat weaker than the last. His throat tightened. His empire, his life, was slipping through his fingers. Is this how it ends? Surrounded by vultures in silk ties? His vision flickered. Faces blurred into shadows. Somewhere beyond the glass walls, sirens wailed faintly, but his consciousness was fading too fast. Then, a scream cut through the chaos. "Move. He's dying, and you're all just staring?" The voice was raw, urgent, filled with fire. Through the haze, Adrian saw her. A girl, no, barely more than a woman, pushing past guards twice her size. Her clothes were threadbare, her hair tangled, her face pale from exhaustion. She looked like she belonged on the streets, not in this palace of wealth. Yet her eyes burned with something no one else in the room had: fearless determination. She dropped to her knees beside him. "Stay with me," she whispered, her voice trembling but steady. "Don't close your eyes." Adrian tried to speak, but only a rasp escaped. She glanced around. "Where's the medical kit? Anything?" Silence. The board members recoiled, horrified. "Security, remove her." "Touch me and he dies," she snapped, cutting them off. Her gaze swept across Adrian's face, the paling lips, the shallow breaths. She had seen this before, on the streets where ambulances never came in time. She knew the signs: cardiac collapse, blood oxygen plummeting. He wouldn't make it unless. Her pulse raced. There was only one chance. She pulled a blade from her pocket, small, rusted, a tool she used to cut rope for her meager belongings. Gasps erupted. She's attacking him, but she didn't hesitate. She slashed her palm open, blood spilling freely. Adrian's fading vision caught the crimson drops falling, the raw scent filling the air. "What is she?" She pressed her bleeding hand firmly against his lips. "Drink," she ordered. "You're not dying like this." Not on a floor surrounded by cowards. His body resisted, but instinct took over. Warmth slid down his throat, metallic and alive. His heart jolted, spasming like an engine sparking back to life. The room froze. The CEO, moments from death, convulsed, then drew in a ragged, shuddering breath. His eyes snapped open, burning with shock and something primal. The girl sagged in relief, her bloodied hand trembling as she kept it pressed to him. Around them, gasps and whispers rippled like wildfire. Impossible. Did she just save him? Who is she? Adrian's gaze locked onto her. For the first time in years, the man who owned everything felt powerless, held to life not by doctors or money, but by a homeless stranger's reckless, selfless act. Her eyes, wide and unflinching, met his. "You're alive because I wouldn't let you die," she whispered. "Don't waste it." And then she collapsed against him, her own strength draining with the blood she had given. Adrian caught her weakly, his chest still heaving, his heart thundering with the rhythm of survival, and with something new, something dangerous. "Who are you?" The conference hall remained silent, the world holding its breath. But Adrian Vallon already knew the empire he had built would never be the same. Sirens wailed outside the conference hall as the echo of whispers and gasps still clung to the air. Adrian Valon lay slumped against the cold marble, his heartbeat slowly steadying, each thump a defiance of the death that had been seconds away. His expensive suit was stained, not with his own blood, but hers. The girl who had saved him was half-conscious, collapsed against his chest. Her thin body trembled from the blood she had willingly given, her torn shirt clinging to her fragile frame. Around them, no one moved. No one dared. She cut herself, one executive stammered, his voice dripping with disgust. She contaminated him, another hissed, as if her touch were more scandalous than his near death. Adrian's eyes snapped open. The words were muffled, but his rage was clear. For the first time, the man who had ruled empires saw his boardroom full of lions reduced to jackals. And at the center of it all was her. The girl stirred, her lashes fluttering. She looked up at him, dazed, her voice barely a whisper. "You're still alive." Her lips curved into the faintest smile before her body sagged forward again. "Doctor." Adrian's voice thundered, hoarse but commanding. "Now." His order jolted them like lightning. Suddenly, staff scrambled. Medics rushed in. But Adrian's hand remained on her, steady, protective. He could feel the warmth of her blood seeping through his shirt, searing his skin like fire. Why would she do this for me? Minutes blurred into chaos. He was placed on a stretcher, monitors clipped, oxygen pressed against his face. Yet his gaze never left her. When paramedics tried to lift her separately, his voice cut through the clamor. "She stays with me." The room fell silent. His board members exchanged shocked glances. One dared to object. "Sir, she's nobody. Just a street girl. We can't." Adrian's dark eyes pinned him with lethal intensity. "She's the reason I'm breathing. If she doesn't come, none of you will have jobs tomorrow." The man swallowed hard, retreating into silence. The ambulance roared through the city streets, neon lights flashing across the tinted windows. Adrian sat propped against the stretcher, weak but unyielding. The girl lay beside him, her hand still bleeding. He couldn't stop staring. Her face was pale, framed by tangled hair, dirt smudged across her cheek. Yet there was something achingly pure in her expression, even unconscious. She looked nothing like the polished women who threw themselves at his wealth. She looked real. The paramedic leaned in. "Sir, we should treat her separately. She's lost blood. And you." "No," Adrian interrupted coldly. His hand tightened around hers. "She stays. She leaves when I say." The paramedic hesitated, then nodded, cowed by the authority in his voice. For the rest of the ride, Adrian's mind refused to quiet. Memories flickered, board members hesitating, investors turning their backs, guards frozen, and then her, this homeless stranger who had torn her own flesh to keep him alive. Everyone failed me. Everyone but her. At the private hospital, chaos continued. Surgeons, nurses, security guards all swirled around him, but Adrian's focus was singular. "Stabilize her first," he demanded, his voice sharp. "Sir, your condition is critical." "I said, her first." The staff froze at the iron in his tone. It was madness. The CEO of Valon Enterprises had just survived cardiac failure, and he was prioritizing a nameless girl over himself. But they obeyed. A nurse bandaged her hand, cleaned her wounds. Adrian finally exhaled, a tension in his chest easing as he watched her breathe evenly. Only then did he allow the doctors to lay him down, connect 4 lines, and run their machines. Hours later, the room was quiet. Adrian sat propped against silk pillows in his private suite, monitors beeping softly. His empire had already begun to spin in panic outside these walls, but none of it mattered. The girl stirred in the bed beside his, groaning faintly. Her eyes fluttered open. Confusion crossed her features as she took in the opulent room, the soft glow of chandeliers, the smooth scent of antiseptic. Her gaze landed on him. "You're alive," she murmured, almost in disbelief. His lips curved into something rare, not the cold smirk that terrified rivals, but a shadow of gratitude. Because of you. She blinked, her throat tightening. Anyone would've. No, his tone was sharp, final. Not anyone. They all stood there. You didn't. Silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken truths. She looked down, guilt flickering in her eyes. I didn't think. I just couldn't let you die. Adrian studied her, his gaze heavy, almost unbearable. What's your name? She hesitated. Maya. Maya, he repeated, tasting it like something unfamiliar yet precious. His hand flexed against the sheets, resisting the impulse to reach for her. For the first time in his life, Adrian Vallon, the man who trusted no one, the man who built walls of steel around his heart, felt them crack. And he hated it. Because even as weakness gnawed at him, he knew one thing with terrifying certainty. He would never let Maya disappear from his life. Chapter and beat. Adrian realizes he cannot let go of Maya, the girl who saved him, setting the stage for his growing obsession and their dangerous, tangled bond. The glass walls of Adrian Vallon's private hospital suite reflected the city skyline, neon lights pulsing like a heartbeat against the night. The silence inside was suffocating. Maya sat on the edge of the second bed, fingers nervously picking at the bandage wrapped around her palm. She had never slept on silk sheets before. She had never even been inside a hospital this pristine. Her world was damp alleys, soup kitchens, and park benches. And now she was trapped in the orbit of the most powerful man in the city. Her gaze flicked toward Adrian. He was awake, watching her with eyes too sharp, too heavy. His presence was suffocating, not because of his weakness, but because of the way he looked at her. Like she was the only thing in the room that mattered. You should rest, she murmured, breaking the silence. I can't, he replied, his voice low, roughened by recovery. Not when I don't know if you'll still be here when I wake. Her chest tightened. She turned away. I don't belong here. I should leave. No, the word cracked like a whip. He leaned forward, his body frail but his authority unshaken. You saved my life, Maya. You think I'll let you walk back onto the streets like you're nothing? Her jaw clenched. I didn't do it for payment. I don't want your money or your pity. Adrian's lips curved into something between a smirk and a grimace. You think that's what this is? Pity. His voice dropped, almost dangerous. I've spent my life surrounded by parasites who worship my power and bleed me dry. You're the first person who saw me as just a man. His words struck her like a blow. She swallowed hard, heat crawling up her neck. That doesn't mean you own me. The silence that followed was electric, charged with tension neither dared to touch. Adrian's gaze dropped to her injured hand. His fingers twitched, fighting the urge to reach out. Instead, his voice softened, unexpectedly raw. Does it hurt? Maya blinked at him. She hadn't expected gentleness from the man who looked carved out of steel. I've felt worse. I don't believe that, he muttered, almost to himself. Their eyes met again, and this time neither looked away. Something dangerous flickered between them. Not gratitude, not debt, but a pull that made Maya's pulse race and Adrian's breath falter. And that terrified her. She stood abruptly, needing distance. You'll recover. You don't need me anymore. Adrian's hand shot out, gripping her wrist with surprising strength. His eyes blazed. I do need you. Her breath caught. You think I don't know what people are saying out there? His jaw tightened. They're already circling, waiting for me to fall. The only reason I'm still breathing is because of you. Do you understand what that means? Maya shook her head, pulling against his grip. I didn't save you to be chained to your world. His hold loosened at her words, but his eyes only grew more intense. For a moment, silence pressed between them. The hum of machines, the muted thrum of the city outside. Everything faded until it was just the two of them, bound by something neither had asked for, but neither could deny. Then a knock shattered the moment. The door opened, and a man in a tailored suit stepped inside. His eyes swept over Maya with disdain before bowing slightly to Adrian. Sir, the board demands to see you. They're questioning your stability. Adrian's gaze darkened. Of course they are. Maya moved instinctively toward the door. Then I should go. But before she could take another step, Adrian's voice cut through, low and absolute. You walk out that door, Maya, and I'll make sure the city hunts you down until you're brought back to me. She froze. The weight of his words crushed the air in her lungs. When she turned, his expression was unreadable, somewhere between desperation and command, obsession and fear. Maya's heart pounded. For the first time, she realized the truth. Saving him had entangled her in chains far stronger than blood. And she wasn't sure if she wanted to fight them, or if she even could. Chapter end beat. Adrian makes it clear he won't let her go. Obsession begins to show, and Maya realizes her act of kindness has trapped her in a dangerous bond she can't escape. The penthouse was quiet, too quiet. Elena sat on the edge of the velvet sofa, her calloused hands folded tightly in her lap. Every polished surface in Adrian Blackwell's world reflected a life that had never been hers. Gleaming chandeliers, polished marble floors, a grand piano untouched in the corner. And yet here she was, a homeless girl who had once fought for stale bread, now sitting in the living room of a man worth billions. But she wasn't thinking about the chandeliers or the silk rugs. She was thinking about the man upstairs. Adrian. The man who should have died. The man whose heartbeat had returned because of her blood. She hadn't even known his name when she let the doctors draw from her, but now every whispered update from the nurses, every echo of footsteps across the marble halls, hammered at her heart like a reminder of the impossible bond between them. The sound of a door clicking open upstairs jolted her. She stood quickly, barefoot, instinctively smoothing her tangled hair as if she didn't want to look like the girl she truly was. He appeared at the top of the staircase, pale but dressed, his suit jacket draped loosely around broad shoulders. His steps were slow but steady, controlled. His eyes, sharp and stormy, locked on her instantly. You're still here. His voice was low, carrying both accusation and curiosity. Elena swallowed. I didn't know if I should leave. You should have, Adrian replied, descending one marble step after another, each measured movement echoing in the silence. Most people do when they realize what they've given up. She frowned, confused. What do you mean? He stopped at the base of the stairs, his height towering, his presence magnetic. His eyes studied her, not her face, not her clothes, but her soul, as though he could see every scar of hunger, every bruise of the streets. You gave me your blood. That means you know I owe you something, he said flatly. People always want something in return. Money, favors, power. Her lips parted. For a moment, she was insulted. Then the fire in her chest sparked. I didn't save you for any of that. Adrian's jaw tightened, as though her words unsettled him. Then why? Why would a girl with nothing give away something so vital to a man she doesn't even know? Elena's voice trembled, but she forced the words out. Because I know what it feels like to die and have no one care. I couldn't let you be like me. The air between them grew heavier. Adrian's gaze softened almost imperceptibly, and for a fleeting second, the cold CEO's armor cracked. But before she could read him further, the sound of a buzzing phone shattered the moment. He turned, pulling his phone from his pocket. The flash of anger that crossed his features was sharp enough to make Elena's stomach twist. They're trying again, Adrian muttered. Who? She asked carefully. He didn't answer. Instead, he stepped closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Listen to me, Elena. Whatever debt you think exists between us, forget it. By saving me, you've painted a target on your own back. The people who wanted me dead will come for you, too. Her breath caught. Why would they come after me? I'm nobody. Adrian's eyes burned into hers. You're not nobody anymore. You're the reason I'm still breathing. And, trust me, the people who tried to kill me don't tolerate miracles. The weight of his words settled over her like chains. Fear prickled her skin, but beneath it, something else flickered, a strange sense of defiance. Then teach me, she whispered, surprising herself. If they're coming, don't push me away. Teach me how to survive this. Adrian studied her as though she'd just stepped into the center of a battlefield she didn't understand. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then, unexpectedly, a small, almost broken smile ghosted across his lips. "You're either the bravest girl I've ever met," he said softly, "or the most foolish." Before she could respond, the lights flickered.
Once. Twice.
Then the entire penthouse was swallowed in darkness. Adrian's hand shot out, gripping Elena's wrist, his body suddenly taut with alertness. Somewhere outside, a sharp crack rang out, glass shattering. Her heart thundered in her chest as his voice, low and commanding, cut through the dark. "They've found us." The world was swallowed in darkness. Elena's pulse roared in her ears, the kind of pounding heartbeat that made each second feel stretched, suspended. Adrian's grip on her wrist was unyielding, his body tense, coiled like a predator sensing danger. Then came the unmistakable crunch of boots on broken glass. They weren't alone. Adrian's voice was calm, razor-sharp in the pitch black. "Stay behind me, no matter what." Elena wanted to nod, to obey, but her throat was locked tight with fear. She couldn't see him, only feel the steady heat of his hand. She hated herself for trembling, but she forced her voice to work. "Adrian, what's happening?" A faint light flared across the room, the harsh glow of a flashlight cutting through the dark. It swept across the shattered floor-to-ceiling windows, shards glittering like diamonds on the polished marble. Then it landed on them. Two men, masked, armed, stepped inside. Elena's breath hitched. Adrian pulled her closer, his voice a low growl. "Go back. Now." "No," her whisper was defiant, though her body shook. She refused to be useless, not after everything. One of the intruders raised his weapon. "Mr. Blackwell," the man sneered, voice muffled under the mask. "You weren't supposed to survive. That's inconvenient." Adrian's smirk was ice-cold, the kind of expression Elena knew came from years of boardroom wars and corporate betrayals. "You'll have to get used to disappointment." The man chuckled darkly and aimed higher. Elena's lungs froze. He wasn't pointing at Adrian anymore. He was pointing at her. "Then maybe the girl pays for your mistake." Adrian moved before she could think. In a flash of motion, he yanked her behind him, shielding her with his own body. The shot fired, explosive, deafening, shattering the silence. The bullet struck a marble column inches from Adrian's shoulder, sending dust raining down. Elena gasped. "Adrian," he didn't flinch. His voice was iron. "Stay down." But Elena couldn't. Something inside her, the same reckless courage that had made her give blood to a stranger, ignited like wildfire. She grabbed the heavy glass vase from the side table and hurled it at the man's arm. It smashed into him with a sharp crack, making him stumble. Adrian seized the moment. With surprising strength for a man who'd been near death days ago, he slammed the intruder against the wall. The second attacker lunged forward, knife gleaming, but Elena, heart hammering, palms slick with sweat, threw herself at him, clawing, shoving, anything to keep the blade away. The struggle was chaos.
Shouts.
The crunch of fists. The metallic tang of blood in the air. Adrian disarmed one, twisting his wrist until the gun clattered across the floor. Elena, terrified yet relentless, managed to knee the knife wielder hard enough that Adrian could finish him, knocking him out cold with a brutal strike. And then, silence. The room reeked of smoke, sweat, and fear. Elena's chest heaved as she stared at the unconscious men sprawled across the glittering shards of glass. Her whole body shook, not just from terror, but from the reality of what they had just survived. Adrian turned to her, his chest rising and falling heavily. His face was shadowed, unreadable, until his hand reached up, brushing a strand of hair from her damp forehead. "You could have been killed," he said softly, though his eyes burned with something far stronger than anger. Fear. Her lips trembled. "So could you. But I couldn't just stand there and do nothing." Something shifted in his gaze then. Something vulnerable, something raw. For the first time, Adrian Blackwell looked less like the untouchable CEO and more like a man, one whose life had been saved not once, but twice, by the same girl. Before he could respond, the distant wail of sirens cut through the night air, drawing closer. Adrian's hand lingered on her arm, gripping tighter than before. They won't stop. Tonight was only the beginning. His voice dropped, urgent, almost pleading. Elena, you need to decide if you want to walk away or stay in a world that could destroy you. Her heart slammed in her chest. She didn't know the rules of his world, didn't understand the enemies circling him. But she knew this. She had already chosen, the moment she gave him her blood. Her voice was barely a whisper. I'm not leaving you. Adrian's eyes closed briefly, as though her words both relieved and tormented him. And then, as the blue-red sirens lit up the broken glass of his penthouse, he whispered a single line that changed everything. Then I'll have to protect you with my life, even if it kills me. White heavy check mark chapter purpose. Opens with immediate action, the break-in. Builds suspense with a near-death confrontation. Shows Elena's bravery and Adrian's protective instincts. Ends with a deep emotional beat and a foreshadowing twist. The danger isn't over. The penthouse was a crime scene. Blue and red sirens pulsed against the shattered glass, painting the white marble floor in streaks of chaos. Police officers moved like shadows, their radios crackling, their boots crunching on shards. Paramedics dragged the unconscious attackers away, their bodies limp and bound. But in the middle of the storm, Adrian stood still, broad-shouldered, blood on his knuckles, eyes fixed only on her. Elena. His voice was low, rough, almost broken. She turned, exhausted, trembling. Every part of her wanted to collapse into the floor, to disappear, but the sight of him, alive, unyielding, held her up. Why won't they stop? She whispered. Why do they want you dead? The room stilled. Officers looked away. Even the paramedics fell silent, as if they weren't supposed to hear. Adrian's jaw tightened. He stepped closer until his shadow covered her, his presence wrapping around her like armor. Because I lived. Her brow furrowed. What does that mean? Adrian's eyes burned with a secret, one he had been carrying alone for too long. His voice was ice, each word deliberate. When I collapsed 2 weeks ago, everyone wrote me off. The board, the vultures in my company, my so-called friends, they were ready to feast on my empire. My death meant their freedom to take everything I built. His gaze sharpened, the CEO mask returning. But then you gave me your blood. You made sure I survived. And now they want to erase both of us. Elena's breath caught. The weight of his words pressed into her chest like iron. This wasn't just about power, it was about her too. You mean, she whispered, I'm a target now. His hand shot forward, gripping hers, fierce and unshakable. You were the moment you touched me. The world seemed to tilt. Elena's heart raced, not with fear, but with something rawer, deeper. She stared at him, at the man who had gone from stranger to savior to something she couldn't name. Then why didn't you let me go? She whispered. You should have pushed me away the moment you woke up. Adrian's jaw clenched, as though he hated himself for the answer. Because I couldn't. Because the thought of you walking away is worse than the bullet that almost killed me. Her lips parted, trembling, but no words came. For a heartbeat, they stood in silence, sirens fading into the background, the entire city falling away until there was only him and her. His hand still gripped hers, not as a CEO commanding loyalty, but as a man holding on to the only thing that had kept him alive. Elena, he said finally, softer now. They'll come again. Stronger, smarter. If you stay, you'll lose the little freedom you have. You'll lose the life you barely hold together. But if you leave, his throat tightened, the words scraping out like glass. If you leave, you might live. Her pulse pounded in her ears. She saw the fear in his eyes, buried under steel and pride. She saw the weight of his world pressing down on him, and she realized he wasn't asking her to leave for himself. He was begging her to leave for her own safety. But her choice had already been made the moment she pressed her wrist against his and gave him her blood. She stepped closer, their faces inches apart, her voice steady despite the chaos. I'd rather die with you than live without you. The air between them snapped like electricity. His breath caught, his body rigid, every part of him screaming to keep control. And then he broke. His forehead pressed to hers, his grip on her hand trembling as though he had been holding back a storm for too long. "Elena," his whisper was both a prayer and a curse. Before he could say more, a detective strode in, cutting the fragile moment like a blade. "Mr. Blackwell," the detective said sharply, holding out a folder thick with photos and reports. "You need to see this. The people who ordered tonight's attack aren't just after your company." Adrian lifted his head, his CEO mask sliding back into place. He took the folder, flipped it open, and froze. His knuckles whitened around the pages. Elena's stomach twisted. "What is it?" Adrian didn't speak. His jaw locked, his eyes darkened, and when he finally looked at her, the storm in his gaze was terrifying. "They're not just after me," he said, voice low, dangerous. He held up the final page, the one with a grainy surveillance photo clipped to it. It was Elena. Her face, her name, circled in red ink. The room spun. Elena's breath hitched as reality crashed in. This wasn't just his war anymore. She was the next target. The detective's voice cut through the silence. "They want her dead, Mr. Blackwell. You both need to disappear before sunrise." Adrian closed the folder with a snap, his expression carved from steel. He pulled Elena into his side, protective and unyielding. "They'll have to kill me first." White heavy checkmark, chapter purpose. Hook. Aftermath of the attack. Sirens. Tension still alive. Emotional depth. Adrian reveals betrayal by his company and why Elena is now a target. Relationship. Adrian's vulnerability and Elena's unwavering loyalty lead to their first true emotional commitment. Twist. The attackers weren't only after Adrian. Their real target list now includes Elena. Cliffhanger. They must disappear before sunrise, setting up the next act.